All right, James. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me back, Jerry. It's always great to chat with you. Hope you're doing well.
We are overdue
Yeah, it's
because
been a while.
I went back and looked. Do you know when we talked when I was on your podcast?
I'd say 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
5 years ago, almost.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right on the nose. It was 2018. I was shocked that it had been that long, but I've literally had your name written down because I don't do a lot of interviews on my podcast, and I've had your name written down on a piece of paper that's kind of gotten transferred to different things for the last 5 years. Being like, I gotta have James on. I gotta talk to him, and then it just finally we scheduled something, and here we are. So I really am glad that you're hanging out with me.
It's a pleasure.
So for people that don't know you, what I thought would be a good starting point is telling people a little bit about just who you are. Kind of what the summary kind of about page information would be, who you are, where your practice is at, like what your practice style is. And then we're going to get into topics like internal marketing and also some associate conversation, which I think is really going to be great for people.
Cool. Yeah, great. So, like a lot of chiros, I got into it for the right reason. So as we were talking before, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5", 6'6", played a lot of sports, had a car accident on the way to a wedding going from New Jersey, where I grew up in North Jersey. We're about 40 miles west of New York City, where it gets a little more country, but we were driving to a wedding. Someone ran a stop sign, smashed our car, put me, my brother, mom, and dad in the hospital for a couple of days. Came out with terrible back spasms. All I wanted to do was play basketball. I was 13 years old, laying on the floor for hours in spasms, and no one could help me. And my grandma was going to chiropractors when nobody went to chiropractors.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been gone for 30 years. And they took me to the chiropractor, a couple adjustments. I'm back up and running. And then a couple months later, we had a career paper for school, what you want to do. My mom stayed home. My dad was an engineer, which I found incredibly boring. So I said, I'm going to go hang out with this chiropractor for a couple of days. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. He's making people feel better and doing these machines and everything else. So I was a 13-year-old kid and said, I'm going to be a chiropractor one day. And I did my bachelor's accelerated science. I did it in 3 years, did my doctorate in 3.5, and opened up practice 2 months after graduation. And my parents never told me until I was all graduated. They said, never thought you would stick with it all those years. I was 13 to 25 when I graduated, and just never changed my mind. I was so excited to practice and did an associate. I externed. I signed the papers of a lease in December. I graduated in December. I already signed a lease before I graduated. Wow. So if I failed my boards, I would have been in big trouble. And I was legally seeing patients in March. I graduated December 20th, and I had the doors open March 2004. And it's been quite the wild ride since then.
Wow, man. I mean, what was your, when you graduate and then you go into opening your practice, I know for me, I did the same thing. I graduated, started my practice, and somebody had asked me one time, why wouldn't you do it? Cause I was kind of a little bit hesitant about it, even though I wanted to do it. And the only excuse I could come up with was I was scared. What was your kind of mentality? Was it kind of blissful ignorance, or were you just scared, or what was the feeling back then?
Yeah, I mean, I still look back all the time, man, I was not smart. And I had no money in the account. I mean, I think I had a couple, $1,000 when I opened up. I painted myself. I drove around and bought used tables with holes in them, and it was not smart. I would not recommend it, but I was just so excited, and it was ignorance. If I knew what I knew now, I would never do it. I'd associate for a couple of years or do something a little differently, but I was just so excited to practice. I just knew that chiropractors run their own practices. That was almost 20 years ago now, and I just jumped into it, but it was definitely blissful ignorance, and I would not recommend doing what I did. I had no backup. Number one reason businesses go under is no capital. And I think by the time I opened, there was $500 in my bank account, and I had 3 months to make rent. It was not smart.
Yeah, I was in a similar situation. The big difference would be I actually got a business loan. I had done a really good job with my credit, and I had some. I ended up getting a business loan, which honestly I don't know that was the best thing for me, because I sort of burned through a business loan before I got serious, because it's that starvation, that fear that you went through, where it's hey, I got to figure this out fast or I'm in trouble. I didn't have that until the loan started whittling down. And then it was oh, well, now I got to take it seriously. The money's going away. So I think I probably blew through quite a bit of money before I took it seriously, which I don't think in the long run was a good thing.
Yeah, it's certainly not easy yet. I certainly wasn't well thought out, but yeah, you're probably right. I mean, that you got to hustle, because I just opened up with a couple $100 in my bank account, and rent was due in 3 weeks, and I had to make that money, and insurance wasn't going to pay you in 3 weeks. So you better figure out how to get, $1,000 in your account in 3 weeks. So it did make me hustle. So it all worked out really well, but yeah, it was not the brightest way to start a practice.
How would you describe your practice style, like what you've kind of evolved into at this point?
Yeah, so it's evolved a lot over the years. I'll give you the more background on the practice. So that first office was 700 square feet. It was a utility room that they used to store the snow blowers. I'm in New Jersey, and so it was real basic. We outgrew that though in 5-6 years. We blew out the wall next door and took over to 1,400 square feet. Added decompression then and some physical therapy. We outgrew that space. We moved across the street where I am now. The main office is about 4,000 square feet. We outgrew that. We took over a lawyer's office next door. Now we're probably 5,500 square feet. Practice evolved a lot over the years. I've gone every way, so I can give you a little experience about everything. It was just, me solo with normal practice in the beginning. I was always into a little bit modalities, but we started off real basic. We added spinal decompression pretty early when that came out. I still do a lot of that. We have 2 decompression tables that are booked every day. We did a bunch of PT for years. I had 1 PT and then 2. And they were very busy, but we actually got rid of that a couple of years ago. Between insurance changes and the hassles of that, we got rid of that and actually boosted the chiropractic practice up. There's another side story. I had acupuncture also for a long time. And with some of the changes with reimbursement and issues there, we don't do that any longer. And funny, as I've dropped those things, the practice has grown. So we got rid of acupuncture and PT in the same time. And the chiro business went up 25% and more than overtook the Acu and PT that we lost and increased gross and net profits. So from there, we went really just to chiropractic. We do a lot of chiropractic. We have 2 decompression tables, class 4 laser. And then on the side specialty we do DOT physicals, quite a few of them. So it's a nice little side niche we got into. I can get to that story if you want as well. But now we're, pretty high volume, 450, 500 visits a week. We did 1.7 million last year. So a pretty busy office, but not too crazy. 3 associates now. There's 3 of us now, 2 associates, myself, and about 10 support staff running the place.
And that's 1 location, right?
Yep, went down to 1. I also did try multiple locations. So you name it, I've tried it. But I have tried satellites, and you're driving around to multiple offices and dividing up your time and your staff's time. And I found it better to kind of concentrate on 1, bigger office.
When you were deciding, like you've tried all these different things, I know for me, like when I've tried different things and some of it I've stumbled into, some of it was very intentional. What's the thought process when you were deciding what services to offer, what not to, what to add, what to take away? I mean, is it really about, is it about what the people need? Is it about trying something new? Is it about reimbursement? Like what are the thought processes there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of docs got to think about that a lot more. Sometimes, we go to seminars and you see a new machine and you just buy it and you don't think of how you're going to implement it, how you're going to pay for it. So, most of it's been pretty intentional. The first thing I started was PT. It really was more frustration. My patients were getting physical therapy and, chiropractors can't handle everything. If someone gets a knee replacement, like most of us can't handle physical therapy for that. So, but I just had a bunch of patients with these bad experiences with PT, and I found like the big corporate PT models were coming in, and the patients were just getting put on a stim table for 20 minutes while the PT was writing notes in the corner.
Yeah,
and, I just kind of noticed some of that, so I was like, we can do PT better here, and so I just started part time and then built that up. So that went well. Acupuncture was more patients asking about acupuncture, so they'd asked about it a lot, so I looked into it, and that was a really good side business for a while. And as insurance reimbursements got worse and worse, and acupuncturists wanted to be paying more and more. I just ended up looking at the end of the year and I'm like, well, I'm paying this and making this, and that margin's not that great. And it takes a lot of time away. You don't realize you're taking away time from the phone for the staff and processing more patients. So we did that. As far as the machines go, spinal decompression did kind of end up in my lap by accident. There's actually an MD I knew, and he'd done for a brief period in New Jersey, personal injury was paying $250 for spinal decompression patients. And they stopped that pretty quick, but the guy bought one of the original DRX tables and did it for a year. And when they took that away, it didn't have anything to do with it. So he offered to me used, pretty reasonable. So he implemented that. And then I learned it later. And now it's a big part of our practice. And then laser, I've always loved, it's good, something good for pain, inflammation. And I always looked at the class 4s, not until they came out, because we are pretty busy, 100 plus patients a day. Until they came out with the hands-free lasers when I finally implemented that one. I just don't need a staff standing there.
That makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
That's the genesis of all that.
So we were talking about internal marketing and now how I would define that is I would define that as kind of leveraging your existing relationships to grow your business. Like that's kind of how I would define it in like a simplistic way. what is your thought process around internal marketing as far as like, how would you define it? And then what is your philosophy around it? Because I think that sometimes the mistake that chiropractors make is they want to jump to nuts and bolts. They just want someone to tell them like, well, we do these calls, or we do this program, or we do this thing. And there's no like philosophical grounding behind what they're doing. Like there's no why behind what they're doing, or so no thought process. They're just trying to get more referrals. So what is your kind of definition of internal marketing? And then how do you kind of think about that from a philosophy standpoint?
Yeah, great question. I think with all marketing and all this stuff, like you said, everyone wants to know the tactics and nobody wants to know the strategy behind it.
Yeah.
And then it's like all the different internet marketing, Facebook's good. And then TikTok's coming next. Like what's the tactic? You really got to know the strategy behind it, know your direct response principles and those things. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And then these things don't matter, these changes, blast faxes were popular, then it's blast phone calls, now it's blast texts, right? But it's all the same strategy behind it. You should know why you're doing it. We do the same campaigns pretty much, right? So yeah, internal marketing is kind of two things we do. Patients, you want to stimulate your own patients for a couple reasons. One, they're going to get bored of you. You got to do something new and interesting, keep it exciting. You need something new to stimulate referrals. I mean, people don't just refer patients. You got to engage them, stimulate them, keep them interested in the practice, know that you want referrals. So at our internal, we're really stimulating referrals is our number one goal for it. Number two, we do ask for things like reviews and stuff like that as well. And just keeping the practice engaging. You got to make it fun and engaging for people. Now, I teach a lot of internal marketing. It's I don't want to, we'll give away a flat screen TV. We just gave away a 75-inch TV last month. And I don't want that big TV in my waiting room. That looks so cheesy. I'm a doctor, but you got to make it interesting. Make it, people get bored of you. You got to have some people talking about you. They got to be interested in you, engage with the practice, and having them constantly engage in something new and exciting is really the strategy behind it all.
One of the things that I tell people a lot when we have those conversations is, if you don't have, if all your strategy is that we're going to ask everybody for reviews, all our reviews or referrals, I'd kind of lump them in the same category. If you're going to just be asking people all the time with you're not switching it up, you're not changing it, you're not, all it is you asking, it sort of starts to feel like all you care about is kind of that thing you're almost like you're looking over the patient's shoulder, looking for the next person. You're looking for something that benefits you. When you create opportunities in your practice, something that a patient can participate in, meaning like, hey, we're going to do a patient appreciation. We're going to give away a TV. We're going to do a patient appreciation. We're going to give away some coffee cards or whatever, like, Starbucks gift cards or whatever. And, when you refer, you can kind of get more likelihood to win. You're creating, what you're doing in those situations is creating an opportunity to ask for referrals in a way that's kind of fun, and it kind of deflects away from like, hey, I'm just trying to grow my business. Like I think that if you can do that, it creates an environment that's better for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm a pretty outgoing, assertive guy. And even for me, like, I don't want to walk out the patients. Hey, you haven't sent me a referral last week. I heard online once somewhere, what did I do? What did I do to offend you? Well, what do you mean, doc? You haven't sent me a referral the last 2 weeks. Like, I'm an assertive guy. Like, I don't want to say that to patients. Like, that's not my personality. And there's very few people that it is. So they hear that. No one wants to do that. But yeah, it's much easier to have like, a snowblower parked in the waiting room. Hey, doc, what's a snowblower for? You sent us a referral this month. We'll put your name in a bowl. We're going to pick a name at the end of the month. That's much easier.
Yeah, that I think too, because I'm actually, I would consider myself an introvert. And so some of these conversations are, I would say, probably harder for me than it is for someone that doesn't kind of feel that way and have those kind of built-in insecurities. I did a lot of those things in my practice because as an introvert, it was less offensive to me to say, hey, we have a TV we're giving away. There was like a reason to ask that wasn't just, it didn't kind of grind up against my introvert nature as much as just saying, hey, who do you know? Or what have I done to upset you? Right. Or whatever.
And your staff too, there's very few of those superstar CAs that are going to run up and say, hey, Jerry, we haven't wrote a review lately. We write a review. Here's my laptop. And that's the other thing. When I teach these stuff and speak to seminars, I'll be like, oh, instead of a TV, can I give away an Amazon gift card? And I'm always like, no, because it's got to be something in the room that they see that they start the conversation. So it's much easier for the patient to say, hey, Jerry, why you got a bicycle park in your waiting room? Oh, thanks, you answered it. But for you to go out and say it, or a staff, it's much harder. Yeah. So that's why it's always something parked in their waiting room. In one of the stories, when COVID first hit, I was like, am I going to do less of these or more of these or whatever? And I'm talking to Buddy, and he's like, go bigger than ever. So I bought a John Deere tractor, and I
Wow.
have a double door, and I pulled it in my waiting room. There's a John Deere like 44-inch tractor sitting in my waiting
Wow.
room for April and May after COVID. I did it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go big and get our practice back. And so we had a John Deere parked in my waiting room for 2 months. So yeah, that's going to spark a conversation. You don't have to be too outgoing to get that one.
I had this running joke with my patients that if you see balloons, something is going on. So like that was our cheap way of doing. I'm not saying we did some bigger giveaways, but it was our cheap way of doing that thing you're talking about, where we would put balloons everywhere, and people would come in. They'd be like, "What are the balloons for?" We're like, "Oh, thanks for asking."
Yeah, that's it. You don't spend money. Yeah, absolutely.
So that was kind of one of our things. And and everybody would laugh, because if you had been a patient for a while, they would see the balloons and be like, okay, what's going on now? Cause they knew, like, that was like, if we got balloons out, we're doing something. And it just was an easy conversation starter, as opposed
Yeah.
to having nothing other than a fishbowl with some tickets in it or something. And then you're going to go bug people. Like that's not interesting.
Right. Yeah. And that's the other, it's boring. I mean, as much as you might not think it, your office gets boring to these people after a while. They've come in, maybe they've been patients for years. I mean, I'm going on 20 years. I got patients coming here for 20 years, and they see the same desk, the same people. Like, it's got to be interesting. And one of the top reasons people quit is they get bored, actually, on top of other things. They're just, bored and tired of coming in and the same old thing. So got to mix it up, even if it is just, balloons.
So what kind of frequency do you do with stuff like this? Like if you're doing whether it's a fundraiser, whether it's a giveaway or something like that, like what is the frequency that you do these things in your practice over like a given year?
Yeah, so I'll teach this, and a lot of people take my stuff, and I've had people like double their practices, do all these great things, and I was like, oh, I do it every, a couple times a year. We do it every month. It's every single month. There's something going on in my office.
Really?
Big, small, but it's every month. There's something going on. Yeah, we have a marketing calendar. I actually got it in front of me. I got it ready for you. You should ask any question, but we do something every month. Some are bigger, they're smaller, but there's something going on every single month. We write a patient newsletter, so there's got to be something on the back to talk about. And there's something going on every single month here.
Talk to me a little bit about the value of making something normal, because I think that this is, and obviously, like, I'm sort of dropping this on you, and I'm using some of my own language, but when I tell people a lot of times that, like, if someone is going to refer, if referrals are normal, like it's a normal, like people know that people here refer, like leaving reviews. If reviews are normal and people say, well, this is a normal thing, what you're doing when you're doing this every month is you're creating a normal environment of giveaways, referrals, and participation. And so there's a certain value there in momentum that is created when you create an environment that is making something normal. So can you talk a little bit about why that's important?
Yeah, great point. Yeah, it's important for a couple of reasons. And sometimes it's harder. We are a pretty busy office. We'll see 125 a day. And people see it's packed in there to say, oh, I might not send doctor any more referrals. They're pretty busy. But when there's signs up in the office saying, refer a patient, be entered to win a John Deere tractor, say, oh, all right, they still want more referrals. And like you said, yeah, it's a cultural referral. This is normal. It's what people do. We reinforce it a ton of ways. We write thank you for your referrals on our newsletter. There's an email that goes out. We have the referral board. There's the contest. So like you said, it's known, it's expected that you refer without having to have those awkward conversations with patients. Why don't you refer? And yeah, reviews too. I think we're 530 5-star Google reviews or something, but we're still asking. They're still doing contests. It's like you said, it's something you do here. You're part of the practice. You refer and review. And again, the busier you get, and the same thing is, they got 500 Google reviews. They don't need another Google review, but we always need some more Google reviews to keep that Google juice going. And so, yeah, when you are busier and you have all those reviews, sometimes it's even harder. They'll say, oh, they're already busy. They don't need a referral. I won't send Jane in. So creating that culture that people realize that that's part of what people do here.
It probably also is something that you could probably speak to the importance of efficiency in a situation like that, because obviously if a person feels like they're having to wait an excessively long period of time, or someone's not calling them back, or whatever it is that is really inefficient about how a staff or how a chiropractic practice might practice, that ends up hindering reviews and referrals and things like that, because people do that same thing that you're talking about. They're basically like, hey, they can't handle what they got right now, and I'm already inconvenienced. I'm not sending somebody else in there because it's already too busy.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and if you are, backed up in the waiting room and all that stuff, you're gonna decrease that. And they are thinking that in their head. That's exactly what they're thinking. Well, I'm not sending John in here. I already got to wait 10 minutes for adjustment. I don't want to wait 12. So even though we see over 100 a day, we have pretty much a no wait policy. People almost never wait here. Schedule's very tight. It's very well run front desk. We're probably slightly overstaffed at any given time, not understaffed. We've more capacity than we need at most times, and that certainly helps spacing people out, proper scheduling, proper training your staff. And that stuff's going to help more of the views and referrals than probably the contest ever would, is having a well-run machine and make sure people aren't waiting too long and all that stuff. Yeah, even on days we'll see 125. I mean, barely any rear ends hit the seats. They're only really the new patients or reevals doing paperwork. Regular adjustment almost never hits the seat, even on a really busy day like that. But yeah, like I said, the busier are, sometimes it's harder because they do think, oh, they don't need referrals. He's already busy. It's swamped. I see every table's full. And it can be harder to get their views and referrals as you get busier.
So you had mentioned doing the monthly kind of giveaway participation type of a thing. What are some of the other things like that, your top kind of 2 or 3 things that you're like, these are really, really important internal marketing things that we do that I think that, that you think other chiropractors should be doing, or some version of it?
In addition to the internal promos, like other stuff, or
yeah.
some of the best promos? Other stuff, and there's a lot of little stuff we do. Like Mother's Day is this weekend. We give away flowers on Friday, like every Mother's Day. Like we don't get anything back in it. It's just goodwill. So like we'll do some little stuff like that almost every single month. And then tying these into some sort of charities, like we've really known that we give back. I just got a referral from the local volunteer fire department, and I think he said, "Oh, your back sore. They send everyone down to Village Family Clinic. They just send them down. So we sponsor all their golf outings. We donate to them." Next month's promo, we're giving away a Blackstone grill for June, and it's send us a referral or donate $5 to the fire department. So that's like, if you tie it in with charity, like we'll do that probably 4 or 5 of the promos a year. It's not just for us; it's for a charity. That was a nice little twist we did. So it's, Doc, I already referred in all my friends. I can't participate in these anymore. Oh, I give a $5 donation to the fire department. We take it all up at the end of the month. They buy new tools and you get a ticket to win as well. So I'd say do a lot of little things like the flowers, little stuff like that. Do some fun stuff. Like in the summer, we do best pizza in town now. So this is just kind of fun. I think my staff like it more than the patients, but we get like 2 pizza places every week, and we cut them in 16ths, and the staff and the patients all vote on the better slice that week. Yeah. And then we do a little playoff. And at the end of the month, we have the best pizza in town, and we pinch them up a little plaque. And like 3 or 4 of the pizza places have their plaque right behind the front desk. Village Family Clinic's best pizza of 2022. Yeah. So do some fun little stuff, and tying to charities would be good. And these little charities, order $100 of flowers from the local florist, costs nothing. The florist knows you. And then, appreciate a mom, especially that one mom whose kids forget them or something. It changes her life, and that's just kind of goodwill to put out there. So it doesn't always have to be, just to get business out of it, put some goodwill out there. And I definitely tie in with a charity. And I think you're picking one and kind of being like, I said, they all say like, oh, Fedich is, our guy over there. He raises money every year, and tying in with a good charity is a good way to go too.
I think that it's so important for chiropractors to get involved like within their local community and find reasons to do that and ways to do it, because you're going to be in the area. Unless you decide to do what I do and just kind of go do something else. But it's like the theory is you're going to be in the area for 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, however long you're going to practice. And, staying kind of to yourself and trying to build a practice on an island is a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it's really tough. I'm kind of in a rural area, and I'll see these, not really chiros, but other docs that come in town and think they're set up real quick. And it's hard. You got to be part of the community. And I think one of the turning points that took us to a busy practice, there was this gentleman on the fire department. I think it was in the fire department. And they're hitting me up for another tricky tray or something. And I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, oh, we get hit up for all this stuff all the time. And I was finally like, you know what? You either got to be the guy that says no to all this stuff, or the guy that says yes to all this stuff. And at that moment, I'm like, you know what? We just say yes to all this stuff. I'm not going to spend $20,000.
Within reason, yeah.
Yeah, but within reason. You want the tricky tray? The girls don't even ask me anymore. Someone asks for a tricky tray, they give them the basket. Like, don't even ask me. Give them a tricky tray. They want a gift card, a little stuff. $200 Little League. Like, we just say yes to all that stuff. And I just think it's really paid off. We'll get patients come in and they say, yeah, we know you always support the local sports teams in the fire department, and being known as that guy or girl who's kind of part of the community. Like I said, it's really big. It pays off, big dividends for sure.
It's one of those things sort of like networking, where when you're building those relationships and doing those things, I typically tell chiropractors, you're going to be really glad 5 years from now that you did this. It's like, you're probably not going to be glad 5 weeks from now that you're doing it, because there's oftentimes a lot that goes out into building relationships before that actually comes back. And it that willingness to stick with it and understand, it's sort of like we talked about, is like you have the tactic of, being a part of your community, but the philosophy is, understanding that you're building relationships, that you're in this for the long haul, that there's like there's a commitment to what you're doing. You're not just doing the thing and then getting upset 5 weeks later because you don't have a practice full of people.
Here's a good story about that. So this just happened like 2 weeks ago. I did BNI like right in the beginning of practice, probably
Yeah.
19 years ago. Miserable. I was used to be a nighttime person. It was early in the morning. I hated going. Miserable. Like I only did it for a year, and we started getting busy pretty quick. And I was like, why did I do that? Kicking myself. One of the guys in the group was thrown out in like the first 2 months because he missed like 3 meetings. They throw him out of the group. So this guy was only in my group for a month. Long story short, his secretary just became a new patient 2 weeks ago. Like this is 18 years ago. I was in this BNI group, did it for a year, complained about it, and like I just got a new patient out of it. And she's already gonna be like an every 2 week, maintenance for life probably. And like that was 18 years ago, and I was miserable doing it, but here you go.
You're like 18 years later, I finally broke even on that stupid
Probably
BNI
barely.
group.
Pardon my soul, I'll never get back from doing that, but that's another story.
BNI is one of those things that the structure can be nice for people in terms of giving them an opportunity to network and do these things. But it requires a massive amount of time, and how much it benefits you, I think, has a lot to do with the people that are in the group.
Yeah.
If everybody in the group kind of has their hand out and they're like, what can I get from this? It's going to be a tough group to really be successful for anyone. And if people in the group are more like, what can I do for you? That's a great group to be a part of, and everybody sort of wins in that situation.
Yeah, I'd agree. Those probably aren't the first thing I'd recommend for most chiros, but like I said, you kind of got to hit a good group, and it get you out there, get you networking.
So we were talking before I started recording this about associates. And I know that a lot of doctors that listen to my podcast and a lot of doctors that I ultimately end up helping are either getting started. Maybe they're currently associates. Maybe they just started their practice really recent. They're just kind of on the new side of things. I would say is probably more my core demographic of chiropractors. And a lot of them are either currently in associate positions. They're maybe thinking about taking an associate position. They've had an associate position. And there just seems to be these nightmare stories that so many chiropractors have about associates. And so I kind of wanted to talk from your perspective, having associates and having a good relationship with your associates. Tell me a little bit about what you look for in a good associate. Like, what are some of the things as someone who's hiring someone that you actually look for?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, it's a very changing landscape, and I just hired a new associate a month ago, and hiring one last time was 4 years ago, and with how different the market changed and the attitude. I mean, COVID of course happened, and that was really threw these young docs off. I feel bad for those guys and girls living through that. I mean, one layoffs at the school and the board's all messed up. So it's been a tumultuous couple of years. So I do feel bad for these young DCs getting out and student loans and all that. I'm sure we'll talk about, but a lot of things we want to, look for some good adjusting skills, obviously important. We can teach adjusting though. Obviously, you hope to have some decent adjusting skills out of school. For sure. And I've seen better or worse for there, but one big thing is some personality. You got to be able to talk and connect with the patients. And when I tell the young chiros, it's most important to connect with that patient on the first visit. I mean, they want to get into the nitty gritty, what's going on with your back and what degree of flexion causes pain and all that. And there's certainly a place for all that, but you have to be able to connect with that patient on the first visit. That's more important than everything else. So personality is probably one of the biggest things. And that's one of the bigger drivers with practice, having a good personality. A little bit outgoing, good personality, pretty well groomed and put together. Want to look for that kind of stuff, picture health. But I'd say good personality, willing to learn. Some young people think they know everything. Obviously, that's not good. So you want to be able to learn.
Dude,
Go ahead.
I was brilliant when I was 24.
Yeah, I was a genius when I was 13. I told my mom too, right? I'd tell you. But yeah, it's willing to learn. And, I don't want to teach a young chiro how to adjust and all that stuff. Hopefully they know that, but how to do a day one and day two. I know people complain that schools don't teach that. I don't really think that's their responsibility so much to do practice management, but I want to teach them, and they're going to have to learn my system and the way we do it here anyway. So it's all on the same page. So you got to be teachable, outgoing, some personality. And that's about it. I don't really make my associates do screenings and all that kind of stuff. We have enough new patients here, but be able to connect with somebody, some pretty good technique to start with, and be teachable as far as our kind of office systems work.
What are some red flags? Like somebody comes in, and whether it's whether it's how they look, something they say, something they do, like what is something that you kind of go automatically go, that's not somebody that's going to be a good fit here?
Yeah, I have a good story for that. So last time I was interviewing, phone interview, I mostly do in persons. I want to, it's chiropractic, so we want to see you and all that. But
Sure.
I had a phone interview last time 4 years ago, and doctor, what time do you guys see patients? Yeah, we open at 9. I get here by 8. Most of the staff here 8:45. First adjustments at 9. Oh, that's kind of early for me. I said, oh, really? So are you far away? She's like, no, I'm probably close to your office. So just my last office started at 10. I said, we start at 9. It's pretty busy. Like at your quarter off. So I'm not sure. It's kind of early. I said, all right. I said, what happened to that last office you're working at? She goes, oh, yeah, they went out of business. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, and then she's like, well, when can I come in for an interview? And I was like, yeah, I don't think so. So like one big thing, even my new doc is so on time is late. We want you on time. That's really, really important. But on the other hand, we don't run late. My new doc was at another practice that saw, literally a fifth of what we do. And they're staying until 8, 9 at night. And it's like, we're out the door. Like we start on time, we end on time. You're not working late. I'm not making you stay late. We don't have weekends, but be on here on time and kind of end on time. So that's kind of one of our like main things here at the office is being on time and ready to go.
I always tell docs, from the hiring standpoint, I always tell them to hire character and competence. Those are the two things that I think that they should value. Cause like if somebody has good, they're competent, even if they could learn, like they don't necessarily have to be experts, but if they're competent, they have some skills that could be developed, then you can work with that. But you also need character, because if the person can't be trusted to show up on time, if the person can't be trusted to do their notes right or whatever, then you have issues there. So to me, it's like, character and competence, those are the things that you should value. And those are things that I typically tell people are important.
That's great advice. Yeah, I think that's the same thing I said. You just said it more eloquently than I did. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That's going to be on my plaque when they put my statue up at Logan College of Chiropractic. We actually joked about that. When I was getting ready to graduate, a bunch of us decided we wanted to do something like to kind of together. So kind of a group of us, and we talked about going skydiving. And we ended up not doing it because we thought it would be a little bit too ironic, because we thought if we're going to end up with a bench with our names on it at Logan, it's going to be because like the class that had the skydiving incident.
There you go. That's not a good way to be remembered.
We didn't want to tempt fate. We figured that was the most likely way that we would all end up on a bench at Logan. So we decided not to do it. We did something else. I think we went paintballing.
That's a little safer.
Yeah. So tell me about training a little bit, like how, because I think a lot of chiropractors make the mistake of hiring people and thinking that they're like expecting them to do a job that they have not well defined, and they have not come up with a good criteria for even training. And I think a lot of associates get hired into positions where they're expected to perform at a level that they have not been trained to perform, because there's just the office does not take training very seriously. So just talk to me about your philosophy on training and kind of how you onboard someone, what your expectations are for new people.
Yeah, I'd say you're 100% right. That's probably the number one reason people fail. I just got done interviewing Cairo, so I'm pretty fresh on this. And the owner doc is, seeing 100 visits a week, wants to bump up to 200 and thinks he's going to hire an associate and he's going to add 100 visits a week to his practice. And that's not going to work. That's the wrong reason to hire somebody. And you're right. Yeah, they expect them to boost their practice. So you got, expectations for sure. We hire and we know, these are your goals by this date, by 45 days, you should be doing this, 100 days, this, et cetera. We have a training checklist for every position. That's chiropractors and front desk CAs and back desk CAs. And it starts off with filling out W-2 and I-9 form and payroll forms all the way down to all that kind of stuff. We also have training videos. So we sat down to do all the videos a couple of years ago. So every position has a folder in our shared drive. So here's the chiropractic folder, and here's the training videos for chiropractor. Here's the CA, front desk, back office, as much as turning on the lights, turning on the ultrasound machine, what the settings are, all that stuff's done for sure.
Are those videos that you guys put together?
Yeah. We just made videos for about everything in the office a couple of years ago. So we just sat down, this is how you use ultrasound machines, how you do our day 1 and day 2 videos are in there, everything to do. We also have, I think one of the biggest, so you're going to start, we have a training checklist for every position. They're going to go through that. They check it off and sign it. And then one of the biggest things I think we do as well, this is our training manual here. I have it right here.
Yeah.
print manual. Everything's pretty much written out there. The day 1 and day 2 procedures are written out there, how to turn the ultrasound machine, all those details. So everyone gets that, but we shut down. We're open 9 to 7 every day. We shut down on Tuesdays for an hour and a half so that we can get 45 minutes of training in every week. And so we basically go through a topic in that training manual once a week for the whole staff. It will conclude like a day 1 and day 2 walkthrough, greeting the patient, walking in the room, what the chiro says, what the CA says. So we'll go through and train them on that for sure. But I said, set expectations. They got to know, in 60 days, you should be seeing 50 visits a week or whatever the numbers that you have for them. But I think, it's too unrealistic expectations where the owners think the associates are going to build the practice, and that's just not the way it's going to work. But yeah, having training checklists, training videos done that we all did internally, and then a manual, and you got to commit to regular training with your staff in one way or the other. And we do it all team. We shut the place down for an hour and a half, and we train every week.
Talk to me about the manual. Like, where did that come from? Where was that? How did that start? Because I know for me, I was blessed with an office manager that was literally sent from heaven, because she was, she was retired. She was kind of doing it just for something fun, but she had held like a supervisor type position before. So she was very competent. She was very organized. And when I would sit down and tell her how to do things, she started writing them down. She was the only one to work there, and she would write it down because she didn't want to bug me again. And she started creating this manual, and I didn't tell her to do it, but she just would like reference this, like, oh, how am I supposed to do this thing? Well, I have my book. And what I saw as time went on, like, wow, that became awesome. That became such a valuable piece for our practice that she created, and that we kind of fixed over time, or kind of tweaked it over time and really fine-tuned it for other people as we hired other people. And a lot of docs, I think, don't have one at all. And when they think about putting one together, they see something like you have, which is obviously very sophisticated. They don't necessarily know where to start with that. So can you tell me a little bit? Cause I'm kind of curious, how did you start with that? Who taught you that? Like, how did it come about?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not, she's definitely sent from heaven doing that for you. So I'm definitely not this kind of guy. Like, I'm a go fly by the seat of my pants guy. So this is not like
me
my
too.
nature. So it really, you had to do it. Every business book tells you, all the seminars, you got to do it, but none of us want to sit down and do it, or most of us don't. So I really just started off slow. We started off like, I'm looking at my staff meeting agenda. You type that up in a Word document. Now here's our weekly staff meeting agenda. And you just kind of add it over time. The next page is our marketing calendar. This is what events we do, what month. And we just added on over time. And eventually we sat down and we typed up our day 1 and day 2 scripts, that kind of stuff. We have frequently asked questions in there. So we actually quizzed on that last staff meeting. All right, the patient says, I can't come in because I don't have a babysitter. What do you say back? So we have pages on that. But basically, it's just grown over the years. How to do a re-eval I'm looking at, helpful analogies, increase your retention. Then at the end, I did have a pretty superstar CA that at some point created flow charts for us. So I'll just hold one of those up there. So in the back, some of these positions, some of these intricate things have a flow chart. This is how to enter a new patient in the computer. Those kind of things we did sit down and flow chart out. So there's all that. It's not that, you build it up. And then in the back, we have our job descriptions for every job and some of that stuff we were talking about earlier. So I would just say, just get started. You can start with one page. It doesn't have to be crazy. And the one thing we started with, like, I'll give you an example. It was just one page for years. It's our staff meeting agenda. It's just, go over stats, testimonials, new patient log, marketing events, our checklist. But then I just wrote out the first time before it was documented, our special training. So here, we do day 1 week, day 2, how to answer the phone, handle insurance, one session on building rapport with patients, how to do the myovision we do, and kind of that role playing. So we have these 8 trainings and we just rotate through them. So you can just start off with this one page and just add up slowly over time. I know it's something none of you want to do, and I didn't want to do it either, but it really pays off a lot. Between this and the videos, if I quit or passed away or something, the office could run without me, pretty thoroughly with that stuff in here, even with new hires.
Yeah, that's actually the thing I tell my docs is I tell them, I'm like, you should get to the point where if all of a sudden you just disappeared, that they could figure out how to run this practice. I was like, there'd be a weird transition and whatnot, but I was like, but if somebody came in and took your place and you weren't there anymore, they should be able to figure it out. Like and I always talk about my first job. Like, my first job was working at Burger King, and they didn't ask me my opinion Like they didn't ask me to put some my creativity on it. Like I went in there and it's like they showed me how to run the broiler, and I could have gone into any Burger King around the country and ran their broiler because there's not a drastic difference from place to place. And they had a well-defined, like, this is how the job is done. And when I worked the register, when I worked the line, like all of those things had a way of doing it that was already established. And most chiropractic practices, they don't have anything. Like there's no set way of doing things. And I think it creates a massive quality control problem because you don't have a standard.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of other issues coming with that. Then docs get to be 65. They want to sell the practice, find out it's worth nothing because it's them and one or two assistants. Nothing's documented, no procedures, so it's not worth much. And it's hard to take a vacation. I've had record weeks on vacation, like multiple times. We've had record weeks here, and I'm out of town. So, my associates know what they're doing. The staff know what they're doing. I remember a solo doc. You come on vacation with a stack of paperwork, phone messages, all this stuff. Now I come back on vacation. I'm like, where's everything to do? They're like, you're good, man. Everything's good. You just go in and you're like, nothing happened. I've had record weeks on vacation,
You're my freaking hero. I did it all by myself, me and just a couple staff. And that was the problem with that model. The problem with that model is it's all like there is no take a week off and come back and it's okay. Like it's take a week off and there's a crap storm when you come back. And it's, obviously there's upsides and downsides of kind of having a bigger practice versus a smaller practice. But, yeah, I totally have practice envy with a situation like that.
Vacations were a nightmare when I was solo. I always said vacations cost me double because you're paying for a vacation, then you lose the money at the office or have a cover doc. I did the cover doc thing a couple times. That's almost worse than closing down for the week because they create more problems. Yeah, like nightmares. So yeah,
I always close down. I didn't do the cover doc. I didn't want the headache. Like my people were pretty attached to me. Like I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but they were okay waiting. They'd be like, we're okay. We'll just wait.
Yeah, you're probably better off. It is. Yeah, it was stressful. I was one of the worst stresses in practice was going away when you're a solo doc. It's not fun.
So what do you think from an associate's perspective, like somebody that's listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, man, I wish I could find someone like this that's going to train me. I'm going to get the opportunity to make a good living and whatever as an associate. Like what are some of the things that an associate should look for? And maybe some of the things that you would tell them, like, if you hear these things, it's kind of a red flag and maybe that's not a good place to work.
Yeah, great question. I think one of the first things you want to see is if they've had associates before. The good doc I just hired, the guy was 65, never had an associate in 40 years of practice, looking to slow down and retire. Now he wants to start working with associates at 65. And so, I'd want to, if I was doing it, I'd want to know this doc has done this before. He's had successful associates around. One of my one doc moved, so we're down one, but my other doc's been here 7 years. So, when you're interviewing and just say, hey, this is Dr. C, he's been here 7 years, and just like, they never heard of associates sticking around that long. So yeah, they do have associates. They've had successful ones, talk to them. But I definitely, like I said, I wouldn't be looking for being the guy's first associate or girl's first associate. And second, I'd want to, anytime you're hearing that language, it's not the associate's job to build a practice. And I think owners need to hear that more than the associates sometimes. It's your job as the owner to have the marketing set up, the new patients coming in. Certainly docs can do talks and do lectures, but if the doc's saying, we're seeing 100 a week, I'm going to bring you in and now we're going to do 200 a week. That's the kind of stuff that's not your job to come out of school and double a guy's practice, been in practice for 25 years. And that's just kind of unrealistic expectations. So I'd want to know they already had associates. They're not expecting you to build a practice. And I'd want to make sure they have some sort of marketing system in place to bring in new business, that it's not, your responsibility or coming from thin air. There's certainly, like I said, I think it's good to go out and do lectures and do some stuff, but you don't want to be out there, being their new patient concierge or whatever you want to call it.
If someone, because I think it's hard to find the doctors that have the situation that you're talking about, because it's like, there's for every one doctor who has a good plan, who isn't wanting their associate to do the marketing for them, everyone that's like you, for everyone that's like your practice, there's going to be 100 docs that are not in that situation. And so what would you recommend to someone who says, like, my option is to work with one of these offices that maybe not is a great fit, or I could independent contract, I could try to start on my own, I could do, like, with the different options that are available, what would you tell them to do? Would you just say, deal with it, do the best you can, and then whatever? Or what would be your advice to someone who feels stuck?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a huge transition going on in front of our eyes with this whole associate model for chiropractic. I think we're going to see big changes. I think it's probably going to go corporate, like dental and a lot of other specialties are going. It's already starting to see the more corporate model. So I think, we're in this big period of flux. I think it depends on what you want to do. I always knew I want to start my own practice. If if an office is busy and you think you can learn a lot, but maybe you're not making a huge pay that you want, or there's not a lot of upside, but you just want to learn for 2 years from a guy, doing pretty busy practice, or a girl, that might be a great thing, depending on what you want to look at. For my office, like there's no cap on income. So you can make, 6 figures easily and over that. So are you looking to associate to make good money, or you just want to learn for a couple of years? I think is the big thing you got to decide. So if you want to start your practice in 2 years, I think everyone should associate a couple of years, even though I didn't. I think that's a bad idea. But you want to start, and there's a place that's a livable salary and they're pretty high volume. You can learn something from them, or they practice the way you want. Maybe suck it up for a couple of years. If not, I definitely look for something that has more upside potential. I'd also say, watch out at, the older docs will say, oh, I'm going to sell to you in a couple of years, or I'll give you a percentage. That whole scam is like, I hear that all. When I was interviewing, I think half the docs had that one. I'll give it to you in 5 years, work for me for nothing for 5 years, and you get a percentage and all that kind of stuff as well.
Dude, I don't think I've ever actually talked about that on my podcast. I've done 400 and some podcasts, and I know I've had this conversation with countless doctors telling them, dear God, please do not listen to someone who says with some sort of undefined time frame and undefined criteria that they're going to sometime maybe close the practice, and you might maybe be able to take it over someday, and you could just have the practice, or you could buy the practice from them. And it's like, everything is just vague. You're going to wake up 10 years later and be no closer to having that practice than you were when they hired you.
Yep.
And every time you ask that doc about it, he's going to give you some like bob and weave Jedi mind trick, like this is not the practice you're looking for type of thing. It is a nightmare. And that happens all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's like the oldest thing going. I don't know why. Yeah, people fall for it, I guess. The docs keep trying it. It's just pretty crummy to do that to people.
It gives you hope. Like the problem is it gives you hope, and you kind of go, oh, this is great. This sounds like this could be a really great situation. And they don't realize it's just not. Like I would say, I don't know what the numbers are, but I would say the vast majority of those situations turn out terrible.
I've never heard of one working out in 20 years. So if you hear one, let me know.
Yeah, I was going to say 99%, but I don't know. I've never heard of one turning out either, ever.
No.
So tell me this, and I don't know how comfortable you are feeling talking about pay structure, but you had said that like there's no cap. We had talked a little bit about income before we started recording. What do you think is a fair, or what do you consider fair, like a fair pay structure for your doctors? Like, how does that look for them? And because I know I've never been an associate, and I never had associates. So my view on it is very outside looking in, but I've talked to a lot of associates and I've heard them tell me what their arrangement is. And I just go, wow, that sounds like you're getting screwed. Like, I don't know how this math works out. So how does your office, what does the pay structure look like so that someone is willing to work there 4 years or 5 years or 7 years and they're fine with it? Like, how does that look?
Yeah, so there's kind of really 3 options of ways to do this. So, the straight percentage deal you'll see out there, you get 40% of your collections, 35%. I'd say for most docs, that's not realistic. It can work. I do have a friend with a big practice runs it that way, but straight percentage is tough, and you're not going to get much for a couple months. And then, insurance hiccups happen, and Medicare doesn't pay for 3 months and all that. So straight percentage is tough. A lot of the new docs want a really high base. There's even stories of people coming out of school, 80, 90,000, 100,000. There's not going to be much incentive to go above that. And if you're honest, you're running a big practice, that could be a way to go. I think the way to go and the way we do it is a fair base that you can live on. You can pay your bills on a base, but then we do a percentage above the base.
Got it.
So really, we have a cap, and it depends on how long they've been there for, but they'll get a fair base that you can live on. We're over, pretty good amount. And then they're going to get a percentage of their collections above a certain number. So ours is, they're going to get a fair base, then they get 15% of their collections after certain numbers hit 15,000 is what we use, to be honest with you. So they get 15% over 15,000.
So they have a net that they know that they're not going to fall, but they have a safety net. What I mean by that is that
Yeah, still
they
got a
know.
base in $50,000-$60,000 plus, so they can live on and pay their bills. But I always tell them right when I hire them, I say, listen, you should only be getting that base the first couple of months, and they get that base on addition of the bonus. So the bonus on top of that, the base never goes away. You're going to get X dollars per week forever, and then the bonus is on top of that.
Do you bonus staff?
Yep. Yeah. So they're going on a different system. We have set goals for collections, new patients, patient visits, and the staff are all on a bonus system for that.
I did that with my staff right from the start. I was actually taught that from somebody else that was wiser than me. And it was always based on collections. So it was never based on anything else. It was always based on, we would set their base salary, sort of like you're talking about with the associates. Their base salary per hour was set, our rate per hour was set when I hired them. And then whatever we were collecting at that point was sort of like the baseline for the bonuses. And then if the practice grew from when they were hired, they would obviously be working more, and then they would make more per hour the following month. So actually all my staff, like their pay actually fluctuated every month because like if we had a really good month, then the following month their hourly rate was higher.
Yeah.
If we had a lower month, then it would be lower, but it never went below whatever they were hired at. Cause I would always tell them, I don't believe in giving you raises just because you've worked here for a year. I believe in giving you a raise because we're doing more work together. It's like, I don't get a raise because I've worked here for a year. So we would set their base. I did have the one staff member that was with me. The one I told you was sent from heaven. She was with me so long, and she was so valuable and had been through so much. She was the one person that I bumped up her base salary at one point in time, where I said, look, I'm underpaying you. Like you're like and she was already doing well because she had grown through she started when I had basically nothing. So she was actually doing really well, but it was still, she was worth more to me than that. So I was interested in what your thought was on bonusing. Cause I think it's really important to have buy-in from your staff. And I think that bonusing them creates buy-in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another point on the associate bonus, one of the big mistakes on both ends for associate or the owner. And I just taught a friend this and he didn't listen. So it's got to be on the associate's production, right? So it's not, especially if you have more than one, but even with one, it's got to be on their production, not the total offices. So, if the owner doc's collecting 40 and you're the associate doing 10, but the owner goes to Mexico for 3 weeks, now that month you're only doing 30 and you're not hitting bonus because he went to Mexico for 2 weeks. That's not really fair to you, right? And it goes the other way too. I had a friend with 2 associates. I don't want to track their individual collections. I'll just have a group pool and they'll both be in it. And one guy's hustling, one guy's not. This is just like 3rd grade, right? It's never going to work out. So on both ends, make sure it's individual. Dr. Kennedy collected 40,000 this month. His bonus is X, and that's it. That's what's going to happen.
There's a term for that.
Going to go away for a month.
There's a term for that. I believe we call that socialism.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people try to run it that way, and I just had a friend, and then they both quit on him. I'm like, I told you can't do that because one guy's going to hustle, one guy's going to goof off. It's not fair. Like that's the way it's been since 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Make sure it's on your production.
So, if someone wanted to transition, and you and I obviously have not been associates, but you have seen people be associates and kind of, I'm assuming, transition into other things. If somebody wants to transition from associate to owning their own practice, do you have any advice for that person as far as like how to do that? Like, here's something that you should keep in mind so that your landing is a little bit easier.
I mean, yeah. So, when you're going in, you got to know what you want coming out. If you're looking to start your own, I mean, that's great. I would save, all that money you can, put those bonus, live on that base. If you have something like I'm doing, and save all those bonus checks, have some money. Like we were talking about before, you're going to need more than you think probably. So save money, make sure your credit's good like you did, all that stuff. And learn as much from the main office as you can, take away. When I was an extern, never associated, but, after a couple of days of watching the chiro adjust, I'm like, okay, I know how to adjust somebody. I want to know what they're doing up at the front desk. And they had a great office manager, and I was like on her all day, like, well, what's that form over there? What's this paperwork? Let me see that. And like learning all that end of it while you're an associate. I mean, that's one of the big benefits of it. There's so many little things you're never going to think about coming out of school unless you learn it from there. So pay attention to all that little business stuff, be ready. And I think when you get close, I mean, I wouldn't hurt to talk to the owner doc. I mean, be surprised. Sometimes they might be willing to help you. I mean, the guy I externed with, when I first started, I didn't know anything. I called him like twice a day and was like, what do I do with this? What's this form? I got insurance, and he helped me a lot for nothing. I didn't do anything for him, but he taught me a lot, and I reached out to him. So don't be afraid to get close to reach out to the owner doc. They might even want to partner with you or help you get started. But I would definitely learn as much of the business stuff as you can. As chiros, we get tied up in the adjustments and the technical stuff. And there's so much little stuff, software, computers, paperwork that you just really need to learn. It's incredible.
I'm always amazed at the associates that are unwilling to, or maybe bashful about asking those questions and digging into it, because they basically only learn what they're being taught, like openly being taught. And so it's like so there'll be associates that have been working for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And they know about, how to do like a day 1, day 2, and they know how to adjust patients, but they don't know anything about the insurance. They don't know anything about the front desk. They don't know anything about paying bills, like having a budget, like putting together a manual for your staff. Like they don't know anything about that because they weren't exposed to it overtly, and they never bothered asking. And I'm always amazed by that, because I just think, what a missed opportunity when you're in a situation like that you should be soaking up everything and maybe you're going to have to chew the meat and spit out the bones. There's going to be stuff that's not great, but you gotta consume it and learn, because you just don't know. Like, you don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, two things. I mean, yeah, I've had associates like that. They may not want to start their own practice. They don't want to know about it. I'll say, this code insurance, this, yeah, they don't want to know about it. They don't want to hear about it. And that's why they're the way we want to be associates for everything. There's nothing wrong with that. The other thing is, our office is open book. So in our staff meeting, it's all out there. So we collected this month, and we had this many new patients. Our OVA was this, PVA. So I believe in that type of management. Not everyone's going to agree with me there, but like my staff all know what came in, how many patients, all that's open book. We teach. One of the first things to do associate, what's OVA mean? I don't know. All right, what's PVA? What's a CVA? And we go through all the stats and try to teach that. But yeah, some people don't want to know. But yeah, if you're thinking about opening your own, you better know that stuff. And like you said, there's so many little things like it, you'll never even think about. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, I was that way with my staff too. Like, everybody knew everything. Like there was no hiding. They knew what the stats were. They knew what the money was. Like they knew everything. And I felt like that was, to me, I wouldn't want to practice any other way. Like, I don't see any point in having some sort of weird information hierarchy.
Yeah. What are they striving for? The goals that they don't even know, what the goals are and what they hit, they got to strive for something.
The thing I noticed when we had, because everything was based on collections, I never really had to bug staff about collecting money, because especially like end of the month, it's like when they knew they were close to like a next, whatever that next level of bonus was, we're like, oh, we're a little bit short of that. They're getting on the phone, but like if somebody owed us money or whatever, they're going to check in with them, and I didn't have to get them to do that because there was buy-in. Like they knew what the money was. They knew what the stats were. They knew where their bonuses were. They bought in because they wanted the practice to do well, because if the practice did well, they did well.
Yeah, I've had staff call their boyfriends in to get an adjustment to meet a goal at the end of the day. Call mom, hey, you need to come in, and yeah, absolutely, get them to buy in. It's worth it. You can't be pulling that whole cart by yourself. You got to get some help, or you're gonna burn out.
100%. I've had same situation. They're bringing people in trying to hit numbers, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And don't be stingy. Write those checks too, docs. A lot of times people put a bonus system. Oh, it was a lot of money. I can't pay that out next month. Or same with associates too. So if you're going to set these things up, abide by them. Don't take them away, and don't change them last minute. That's another good old fashioned trick, Dr. Kennedy.
100%. Like that's another thing that I never even considered doing. But the thing I do tell docs when they're putting these things together, I say, don't make promises you're not going to keep. Like it's better to have a more simplistic or lower end bonus structure that you're going to do and be consistent with it than it is to make promises that you're not going to keep, because you're going to lose staff. There's no way to do that without losing staff.
Absolutely. Yep. Hold to it.
All right. Is there anything that you wanted to say? I know that you have stuff going on. I don't know if you wanted to kind of plug your own stuff, like as we're kind of wrapping this up, kind of the floor is yours.
All right. Yeah. But thanks for having me on. If you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to reach out to me. Website's just my name, drjamesfedich.com. I don't do any more new podcast episodes, but I have old ones out there, including ones with you. You can find Dr. J's Path to Success on there everywhere you look. There's a couple hundred episodes with pretty much everyone in chiropractic on there. Anything else, just reach out to me. Anyone wants to come check out the practice or email me. I'm in full-time practice all day. Happy to help anybody who needs it.
Very cool, man. Well, I am glad we finally did this.
Yeah.
We may have to do it again in another 5 years, right?
Yeah.
But thank you for hanging out. Thank you for being on here. I really appreciate it.
You're the man, Jerry. Talk to you soon.
Yep.